Okay, so when I was a kid, I loved the 1960s Batman, starring Adam West, as well as Linda Carter as Wonder Woman. So when 1994's Blankman came out, I was hooked. I remember being a kid and having my best friend at the time dress up as Blankman and other guy, and we would do back-to-back. This is 1994's Blankman. I am Ryan Hunter, your host here at the Radical Retro Rewind podcast, and I am joined by our revolving co-host, Rob himself. Thank you for being here this week, Rob.
I'm back, bitches. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, Rob. It's been so long, I feel like, since we've recorded together.
Yeah, it has been long. You've been stepping out on me with those other people.
Well, we're back. We're back to basics. So, a little news, the other co-host of this show, David, is in the middle of a move. So, eventually, David will be back. We're glad to have him still with Thundercats. We're back to David and Rob. Whoop, whoop.
Whoop. Thank you for suggesting this. This was a definite reminder of movies that I have not seen in a very long time. I don't own this title, but I definitely remember watching this as a kid a lot. So yeah, it was a treat to be able to watch this again.
I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. Don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but the rating that this gentleman gave the movie after all this time, I'm still impressed with.
It's you and me both. But we'll definitely get into that because, yeah, I was very surprised of that rating as well.
So Rob did give this movie a 3.5. If anyone doesn't know, Rob also has another show, actually many shows. One of them is Movie Geek and Proud, where he watches movies and reviews them and gives them a number score. So Blankman received a 3.5 out of 5, which to me is totally acceptable.
Well, it's definitely above average, so that's good. What would your rating be before we review it?
I'm going with the 3.5. I think you really summed up this movie because it is above average. And again, I guess this is the radical retro way of reviewing, but I tend to like the movies that people dislike. Although Rob has a great quote for people with their taste in film. And would you mind letting the people know?
There are no such thing as a guilty pleasure film. Also, every movie has at least one fan. So that's my thing. There is somebody out there that is going to appreciate it where you don't. Sorry, not sorry.
That's so true. And there's some in this world where everyone could just rate or review a movie and trash it just for the sake of trashing it. I love that Rob is here to remind people that there are movies out there that might be not panned critically by people, but are still enjoyed. So 1994, we have Damon Wayans and David Alan Grier. Now, I have a feeling that many people first got to know these two gentlemen on a little show called In Living Color, which is actually a huge show at the time.
Yes, definitely. I, as a kid, watched this show every week, and yeah, it was hilarious.
Do you remember, not just because we are who we are, but Men on Film, where Damon Wayans and David Alan Grier would do their amazing characters?
Well, I mean, everyone loves movies. And I shouldn't say everyone literally, but like a lot of people love movies. So to have a recurring character where two people play critics and have their own talk show, especially when Siskel and Ebert at the time was very popular to get your movie fix. This was entertaining, but you saw two people who were very unapologetic and they were different than the Siskel and Ebert that you saw, and they gave a lot of sass about the movies that you watched, and they had their own specific critique on films, and it was basically who was hot in the movie.
Almost out of time. Would you join us next week when we talk about Mel Gibson's Lethal Weapon? I hope it's loaded. You crazy.
But you had these two men acting very flamboyant, and, you know, who knows what I would think about it today, but back then it was hilarious, and I think it was just because they were vibrant, and they were just, again, like I said, unapologetic, and they just didn't care. If they didn't like something, they would tell you, and they would have their catchphrases, and they would just have fun with it.
I think, though, at the time, you're right, like, going back to see these skits in the year 2021, it might be a little cringy, but I feel like the actors, in Jamie Foxx at the time playing Wanda on that show, they were into it. They gave their 100% to those characters. So yes, it's a parody, but they also, I think, were feeling the characters. Not like they were embarrassed to play these characters by any means.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, that's how I saw them. And I think that Damon and David have great chemistry together. You know, they went on to do a sitcom that didn't really live for very long, but I enjoyed their first season, and they've done plenty of skits together and other movies. So I think their chemistry is great.
Can you believe that Damon Wayans is 60 years old? I just saw this.
Really?
How is this possible?
Wow. I'm not even surprised by that, but I wouldn't even have thought 60. That's crazy. And he did that. Well, so when he did Lethal Weapon, right? There was a lot of drama that went on with that show, but one of the biggest things about it that they couldn't really do for future seasons was have him do all of these action scenes anymore, because he's getting to that age. You know, he's like literal Danny Glover, like, I'm too old for this shit, right? Like, some of those action scenes were very demanding.
It's crazy because he looks so young still. Like, even in Lethal Weapon, I haven't seen the series, but I did see clips from when he was on. I never in my mind thought he was 60. I mean, I guess it does make sense. But my God, yeah, he looks amazing.
Yeah, no, he looks good.
Okay, so Blankman at the time, this came out in 1994. So what we had in the 90s, Rob, with superheroes, I mean, we had the Superman movies, of course, but we also had Batman and Batman Returns at this point. For representation, though, for an African-American, kid, I would say that Blankman, Meteor Man, and Blade is what I could think of in the 90s for superheroes.
To go from childhood memory, those were it. That was it. Now, of course, I can do my research and be like, oh, was there any other cartoons or, other TV shows maybe that had a superhero? We had Hammerman, animated series,
Yes.
things like that. And those are all great. But at the same time, if I can't even get past my one hand on how many black superheroes that were on the screen, then that's a problem. I don't want to get too political on this episode. The reason why I think Ryan is bringing this up is because this movie, while people didn't like it for, its horrible quote unquote acting or really, crappy writing and not so many, like dumb jokes, this movie was very important to the community and needed to be made. So you guys can all crap on it, but at the same time, this movie was needed. To have just this and like Meteor Man was, it just sucks that there weren't many other films out there that was, like this.
And the fact that it's panned so much, Rob, the humor in this movie is not unlike any other 90s stupid comedy movie with humor. This to me is 90s humor. So I don't understand why it is so panned as much as it is. Yes, okay, maybe it was the year that Forrest Gump came out as well, but you're comparing like a comedy movie to like, a serious movie. This is 90s comedy.
So look, here's my thing on this now as I was watching it, and this is something that I didn't realize because I was a child, but given the sort of level of humor or type of humor that you're getting, yes, it did have a predominant black cast and maybe some language that were used from the black community versus, but at the same time, the silly humor that you got in this was not that far-fetched from a lot of other stuff that we've gotten before and after. But you also have to remember that this movie paid homage to Batman in the 60s. That's why the movie is so cheesy and unbelievable, and it just plays on, it does just enough sort of like homage to a series without becoming a spoof, because they didn't make fun of anything. I think they honored Batman, the series from the 60s. And I love the fact that everyone adores the Adam West series and finds this to be like abysmal. How cheesy can you get with the older series? But for some reason we love it. Why? Because there are people on the screen that look like you. Of course everyone is going to adore this series. Don't give me anything about the writing or anything like that. And not to say that Blankman has the same type of writing, but like if people are going to dislike on how over the top over-the-top geekiness Damon Wayans was, or the fact that nobody could tell Blankman was, you know, Darryl. Like, it's a literal homage to the Batman series on how cheesy it was. That's exactly what they did, and I love that.
That's why I think I love this movie as a kid as well, because it is a homage.
Tell everybody what the movie's about, because I bet you nobody knows what this movie even is.
You know, actually, you're right. So this is the synopsis that they have for this movie. I had to look for a few of them that would actually sum up the movie correctly, because it seems like no one has given a proper synopsis to this movie. In living colors, favorite team of Damon Wayans and David Alan Grier join Robin Givens, John Polito, and Jason Alexander in this hilarious, see, I picked one that actually likes it, crime-fighting comedy about two slapstick heroes who triumphant over evil, more or less. Clad in a bulletproof outfit and his grandmother's housecoat, Darryl Walker takes to the streets in pursuit of truth, justice, and his first kiss.
Now, it sounds ridiculous, but just think about it. This is the black version of Mystery Men. To give you any context.
Perfect example.
I mean, it's a gentleman who sees a lot of crime happening in their neighborhood. He wants to take care of it. He doesn't have any powers, but he has enough motivation and courage to go out there and fight crime. But at the same time, Blankman, Darryl, he is sort of a man-child. He lives in that fantasy world of the Batman series of when he was also a kid, because being a grown-up has not done anything for him. And so you're dealing with a little bit of that as well, you know, him just growing up. But at the same time, he really cares about his community, and as smart as he is, he creates his own sort of, you know, superhero aesthetic and identity, and that's basically what it is.
So we should say that he is a genius, this gentleman. So he might be a quote-unquote man-child in ways, but to balance that out, he's super intelligent, and he was able to create all these things to fight crime. So, and I do love that they set up how sweet and caring he is. I remember texting Rob a few days when I was rewatching it, and I'm like, I love that he kisses his brother on the cheek, because that's so me, and it just shows like there's no, like, he's just lovable. He's a lovable person that I personally would love to root for. The underdog.
So David Alan Grier and Damon Wayans, they play brothers, and the movie starts out with them sort of watching Batman on TV and them two embracing the awesomeness of a superhero on TV. They dress as superheroes and they pretend that they're fighting just like they are on TV. I mean, this is childhood at its best. You know, it's very highlighted in the first scene. But, you know, what also is so apparent in this first scene is that you see that these two boys are from a lower class community. You know, they're watching a show that they can barely see because the reception is so bad, because the TV is so old and broken. You've got a fork inside of the TV that they use to change the channel because there's no remote. And so they do their very best to work out a way to get the TV better, and then by doing so they kind of mess up the house and they get in trouble by their grandmother. It's also there to kind of show you the class level that you're dealing with, and the fact that Batman Bruce Wayne is rich as fuck and can do anything that he wants when he's solving crime. But in this story, you're going to see this high level of same intensity for his community to fight crime, even though he has nothing. He has no money. He has no gadgets. He has no, you know, Batmobile. And that it's setting up the fact that it's coming from a person who is poor and has, you know, less. And that just sets up the tone of the film, in my opinion.
And like you were saying earlier, Rob, it sets up the homage to Batman, because not only are they watching the 60s Batman dressing up as heroes, but then we also get the Bam Boom cartoon opening right after that, which is right out of the 60s Batman. So I don't understand how people don't understand that this is a parody. And I do love this scene in the opening, seeing them as kids wanting to be heroes, because again, this was me, and it was Blankman. I know it's crazy because I'm this Italian white boy from Long Island, New York, but I wanted to be Blankman. I cut out of a robe the eye patches, like his eye holes, like Blankman has like almost like looks like a towel around his eyes or something from a robe. I did that. I made a little robot, and I would call it J5. So he wanted to be Batman, and I wanted to be Blankman.
That is so crazy. I had no idea that you did that. That is so amazing.
I wish I could find the pictures because I made my own Blankman outfit. And
Oh, really?
I wish I had these outfits. I'm telling you, I wanted to be Blankman. And I just realized after all these years, Rob, is J5 the robot supposed to be the Jackson 5?
I mean, they never really said. I kind of got that impression that he nicknamed the robot to be like the Jackson 5. So J5, yes. There's also Johnny 5 as well.
Johnny 5, right.
So it could go either way.
But my God, and J5, I mean, we'll bring him up later, but I loved this character.
Oh yeah,
He's
J5 is great. Yeah, I mean he's the, you know, before Jarvis there was J5.
Hello, Kimberly. We also should set up that the two brothers are raised by their grandmother, who people remember from a little show called Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, where she played the chief of Acme. I want to say if it's Acme Agency.
Hello and welcome to Acme. I'm the chief, but you can call me, well, the chief.
Yeah, she's Agnes Acme, and she was also known as the chief, so it's Acme Agency.
And this is played by Lynn Taipen. She unfortunately has passed, but you will recognize this woman right away.
Oh, yes.
Do you love the old makeup they applied to her when we go into the future? Like, I don't know if it's now because I'm watching this on a Blu-ray machine, but you could totally, like, tell, like, they almost put, like, that creepy looking, like, makeup on her face to appear to look older when they time jump to when the boys are adults.
Yeah.
But she's another fantastic actress that will bring you back.
She's great. You know, most of America will remember her as the evil, sort of like, she was the woman who you would think started the Million Moms, like, thing. Like, she is the top prosecutor for anything hope, good, different, whatever. Like, so in the movie Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman, you know, he plays a principal who tries to revive this school that's dying, and his rules are very unorthodox, and she notices all of this, and it is her life mission to shut him down. And this woman was known as the villain of all villains, and she was hated by everyone and everything. I'm not surprised if she got stuff thrown at her just like walking down the street.
Oh,
I mean, honestly, she was that good because she was so evil. And so if it's not the chief, it's this woman, Miss Barrett. Oh my God, everybody hated this woman, but she was such a wonderful actress.
Miss Barrett, yes!
Yeah, so... I mean, amongst other things, she's definitely been in other stuff, but those are the two biggest things that you would know her from. So it's safe to say that you enjoyed this movie still after watching it for so long.
So much so that I'm like, why did I not rewatch this movie since I bought this DVD? In 2004, this damn DVD came out because I remember buying it when it came out, and I had not watched it since then. And this was a regular viewing for me as a kid. Like, I used to pop this VHS tape back in continuously when I was growing up. So I'm so glad that this show again allows me to go back and then get to talk to people like Rob about it. So yes, I loved it. So Rob, let's get into spoilers and let's actually play that warning.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson!
You are now entering the spoiler zone.
Danger!
That's the new spoiler warning for anybody. After this, we will be entering the spoiler zone. Darryl's grandmother, she works for, well, volunteers probably, for a re-election or an election of a mayor to clean up the town. Now, surprisingly, the mayor doesn't turn out to be corrupt, which is so crazy, because even rewatching this, I couldn't remember if the mayor was corrupt or not, but...
He wasn't, but he just sort of fell into the role of being corrupted. I mean, he wasn't evil himself. I just think that there must have been something that happened to where he actually did need his funding after all, or, you know, something happened to where he was kind of stuck in this situation and just went along with it. But then he obviously tries to make amends for it, you know, down the line. But he wasn't as evil as some mayors are in different shows.
Also, what works in this movie, it flips things on its head, because we're so used to the Batman Returns, where you have the mayors and they're like this evil character. And, you know, so it was nice to kind of see the turnaround for the mayor, I'm spoiler again. I mean, he ends up being killed. But Darryl's grandmother and Darryl and Kevin's grandmother, I should say, ends up being murdered working for this election,
this campaign.
Yes. Thank you, campaign. Which actually, I feel like is one of the saddest scenes, Rob. I know it's played almost for comedy with the way that Darryl is crying, but I teared up watching this scene.
I forget, and they don't show this in the movie, but I forget that she was shot. Usually when it comes to, killing people of that age, it usually becomes like maybe in a fire or like an explosion, something to where it doesn't seem like there's a lot of pain. To take a Uzi, like a machine gun, an automatic, and to like just go blasting at people, including a grandmother, like I can only imagine what her body looked like, and just having to see that this woman was shot. And yeah, I mean, that was very sad. I mean, usually it's just one shot, Uncle Ben style, and you're done. Like,
yes,
who knows? Like, but they didn't show it. That's the thing. But it was very ruthless, and they meant business. But she was a sassy ass woman. I get that she has her own rules and she's set in her ways and she'll say whatever. But, sometimes old people just kind of talk out of turn when it's not really necessary and you're just bringing unnecessary drama. Like, I can't say that he wouldn't have ordered his men to do this if she hadn't to talk shit about them and embarrassed him. You tackled his masculinity and he came swinging, like literally. And it sucks, but that's how it happens sometimes.
Well, they did set up that the grandmother was this feisty grandmother, because right in the beginning, we find out that Kevin is the brother that's more, I mean, he's of the quote-unquote real world. He works at a paper, but it's one of the like the tabloid trashy kind of like Weekly World newspaper, but he's more of a serious character. He's in reality, he sees what's really going on in the world, and he does bring this lady in the first scene. She sleeps over, and I do love when the grandmother says, you could have at least fed that little heifer. So we did set up her feistiness, but the grandmother does get killed, like Rob was saying. And then this sets up that he is going to become a hero. He's going to avenge his grandmother's death, and he's going to, clean up the streets, because there is a lot of crime going on in this city, and Blankman is going to be the hero for the people.
So this is what I find really interesting about this whole setup. It's very similar to Batman, and almost every superhero story has that origin where somebody dies to kind of shine a light on how bad it is that your neighborhood and the world is, right? So it's crazy. Kevin's character, David Alan Grier, yes. He, again, when he was a child, was very into the superhero gig, just like Darryl. Movies like this always needs that sort of voice of reason, the one who is relatable to the audience, which is, it's ridiculous to dress up like this and go out. So you need somebody to speak for that voice, right? So I also think it's interesting that two kids who grew up the same still managed to, turn out differently. And this older brother now, David Alan Grier, Kevin, he grows up more of a playboy, but yet he's still living with his grandmother, just like Darryl. So it's just funny that even though they grew up the same, one turned into this sort of grown up while the other stayed sort of in his childlike state, just shielded and protected by his grandmother. And that's the other thing, is that his grandmother encouraged Darryl to be this inventor, to be closed up, to she never forced him to go out and get a girlfriend or a big paying job. She just wanted him to be happy, and he was fine in that bubble. And with her death, he had no choice but to really look around his surroundings and be like, we live in a shitty place. You saw that, he did the electronics store and he used it for his inventions, and he didn't really think about what was going on around him. The minute she dies, he notices a woman, getting mugged on the subway, and he felt compelled to help. Now, where did that come from? He's such a shy kid. He can't even stand up to his brother when they get into squaffles, and he's like, there's a crack house across the street. And like, he wants to do so because he can't, his grandmother is no longer shielding him from the bad world that's right outside his door. And so now all of a sudden he's like, we need to do something about it. And, Kevin, who is supposed to be the grown up who notices all of this, he doesn't really care. He's sort of bitter. And and the childlike sort of like motivation and confidence to want to do something is sort of like taken out of him, right? So it's interesting to have these contrast characters in a movie like this having to figure out, like, is it our place to do something? Because we don't have anything. He says, I just want to be like Batman. And he's like, no, you can't.
Yeah.
He was rich. He had everything. You have nothing. You can't do anything. Let it go, right? So I do like sort of that setup.
And I do love that at the same time, again, this is an everyday man. Or you would even say this is a man that has all these things stacked against him and he still wants to make a change. I just love that. And if that's not a superhero, what the hell is?
So, I mean, even though we're talking about this in more of a serious way, and again, that's because, you know, watching this as an adult, you sort of see the underlining, you know, points that this movie is trying to convey, even though it's trying to be as silly as possible.
Yes.
That there's really is sort of a heavy sort of commentary that is being portrayed in this movie, which I thought was good. And let me just also add the fact that, you know, you have your All-American Hero TV show and you have your Mystery Men and you have all of these other sort of superheroes that have come up, you know, the Hulk and all that stuff. Blankman is an original, unique idea. Yes, it may be taking a lot of cues from Batman and other superhero-like shows, but this is a literal character created from scratch. And if that is not something to sort of be proud of, I don't know what is, because this is not based on a comic book, a cartoon, or even a skit on In Living Color. This was literally thought out from the brains of Damon Wayans. And I love the fact that a movie like this exists because, as people will say, all we do is just reboot everything. Well, here's a movie that was actually unique, and unfortunately, people didn't like it. And, you know, that's just something to think about. You know, you can say you didn't like the writing or whatever, but at the same time, this is an original idea, and I love it.
Original, and again, it's played for laughs, but at the same time, it's full of heart because you could tell who the creators behind this loved superhero movies. It's a homage, but also, yes, it's supposed to be funny. You're supposed to laugh, but I'm telling you, even like that funeral scene, there's scenes that are, like, I really am emotionally invested in. Again, yes, maybe it's because I grew up with this movie, and that's what a lot of nostalgia is, that clouds your eyes possibly to faults, but
well, to be fair, you know, like almost every single review that I have read about this movie will talk about that kids may enjoy it and see sort of the fun and wonder that it has, but this movie for some reason will not appeal to adults. The adults will not find a lot of these jokes and hijinks to be funny at all. They would be seen to be very cheesy, pretty dumb. I mean, I think the writing on In Living Color is really good, but honestly, if this was a run-on skit on In Living Color, I think this would be more adored than it would as a full-length film.
Definitely.
I think it comes with a bit of a respect with In Living Color as well, because there were a lot of skits on that show that did not land well, and that goes for Saturday Night Live today. You know, some stuff don't land well. There was something about Blankman that just didn't hit people the right way or put them in the mindset to just have fun and just enjoy kind of what you're seeing. But again, if this is a movie not for you, that's nothing bad. It's just most of the people would like hate on the jokes and some of the acting. And I'm just like, I can easily point out so many other films that do the same thing that get so much praise. And so what exactly is the difference?
Yes.
And that's what kind of like irks me a little bit with the critique of this film.
And I mean, to your point, yes, you're right. Kids will enjoy this because of the wonderment. But I gotta tell you, Rob, the jokes that I did not realize until now, to me, there's so many adult jokes that I think adults should find funny. So we should set up that the love interest in this movie is Robin Givens, and she's playing Kimberly Jones. So she's a reporter, so our Lois Lane, in a way.
Yeah.
She becomes really Blankman's champion. So she sees that Blankman has come out when he finally does. And we find out that she works in the same building as Kevin. So she's the real reporter in the real news station. And Kevin, again, is in this like Weekly World News crap paper in the basement. And we should say that his boss is what's the character's name?
Yeah, Mr. Stone, Jason Alexander, who again is just one of those actors who don't even have to try. Like, he's just so funny anytime he opens his mouth. And I think that this character is literally set up to be played by him. And the first thing that I thought of when I saw his character, so he's completely bald and he's in a wheelchair. He comes off as this war vet who just doesn't give two shits about the world. And as any boss of a cheesy tabloid, he just wants ratings. He wants to talk about the most vile, disgusting, sort of degrading storylines and lies that come out of his paper. But when you see him do his boss thing and just sort of go on, the immediate person that I thought of was Cy Borgman. So Cy Borgman is a DC character from the Batman-esque sort of universe, but he is predominantly animated in the Harley Quinn cartoon that is currently on HBO Max and the DC streaming channel. And so Cy Borgman is this, I don't want to get his character too wrong, but he is a man who is also bound by a wheelchair, but I guess may have lost a limb or two due to the war. And basically his arm and I think a leg was replaced with robotic technology, but his wheelchair is also like something of out of this world. It's just got all of these gadgets. He's like this old school racist Inspector Gadget. And both characters are so similar. It's so crazy. And the character is voiced.
It sounds exactly the same.
Yeah, the character is voiced by Jason Alexander, who also voiced another old school detective slash sort of like not superhero, but sort of crime fighter. If you remember on USA, Duckman.
Wow.
Yeah, so I like that the comic book
Duckman,
roots are kept in the family with Jason Alexander. I think there was no choice but to have him in this movie.
The scenes that he is in, he does do well in them. Like, he sets up his cranky, miserable, low life kind of boss character fantastically. So Blankman comes up with a way to create a bulletproof suit for himself.
Yeah.
Later on, though, when the poor other guy is shot, we find out that Blankman's suit is the only suit that is quote-unquote bulletproof. When Kevin says that line, it came back to me right away.
Oh my God, he stopped me.
Right before he's like, I have a target. Like, he turns around on his ass. He's like, it's right here. Like, I just love that. He's ready. He wants it to bounce right off.
Sammy, shoot him. Well, come on, Sammy. You bad. Shoot me. Now, would you shut up, man?
That's something I didn't tell you.
What? I got to paint a target on my ass? Oh my God, you shot me.
That's what I was trying to tell you. Only my costume is bulletproof.
Yeah,
nope.
I got the color of target on my ass, and he's like, oh my God, you shot me.
I always wondered, Rob, why didn't Blankman make other guys' costume also bulletproof? Did he not have
one of two reasons? He thought that he would never put on the suit, for one, so he just didn't even bother. Two, the other guy, Kevin, he studies martial arts, so he probably thought he didn't need it.
Yes.
And that,
I love that Kevin is a martial artist.
Yeah, so Darryl doesn't have any fighting skills whatsoever. In fact, he bumbles his way into defeating his foes, so that's his thing. But that's another thing that I like about this movie, is that given that he's just a normal Joe, technically through science, he was given a superpower by accidentally mixing chemicals that allowed for his fabric to be, man-made, like weapon-proof. Like a knife couldn't go through it, fire couldn't penetrate it, and bullets, bounced off of him. But what was great is that during his first mission, immediately the bad guys were like, well, just shoot him in the head, because that's what you're supposed to do when you come across something that is bulletproof. You shoot him in the head. And I love that they pointed that out.
Yes.
So a great thing that I liked about this movie that I noticed throughout rewatching it was that, again, it didn't hit that spoof territory. Even though this movie is supposed to be very comical and very fantasy, the rules and the world that was created within Blankman stood true.
Yes.
Like him with the mask, you couldn't tell who he was outside of it. And even though he is just a regular Joe, the city actually took him seriously and they looked to him for help. They wanted to reach out to him and be like, can you help me get my cat out of the tree? Can you help me get my dog from under the house? Can you help me? You know, like one of my favorite scenes, even though it's super
Deliver
small.
a baby.
Yeah, right. Deliver a baby. Even though it's like super small, it's during a montage and he saves this store from being robbed. And he took sort of this like grappling hook sort of thing, but it was made with a gigantic boot. And it was sort of like a retractable like boomerang or like a, you know, like a hook. And he just comes around the corner and he throws it and he thwarts the robber. And then the, you know, the clerk behind the desk gives him a thumbs up. And it's just like, they're actually taking this guy seriously. And I love it. And they're putting up all of these signs with like this community love, like my store was protected by Blankman. I love that. I just thought that was cool because they could have easily just laughed at him. They could have easily just laughed at him the whole time with this outfit. And, you know, yes, there was a scene where they did, but it also showed a little bit of the commentary about how cops just don't give a shit if they're not getting paid. And so they lived in a town where they were not paying their cops to do their job. And they felt that, well, I'm going to do the minimum here and not really care. And they just let crime just run amok. And so I thought it was cool that they actually took him seriously, given that most of the things that he did would not work in today's world, you know?
During that whole thing where we're setting up his crime fighting thing, and we mentioned that he does deliver a baby. During that scene, there's two things. One, did you notice that I feel like there's a homage almost to the Penguin from Batman Returns?
Oh, yes.
When is that okay, so I'm not seeing things.
No, you're not. They did it twice. They did it once with the villain and once with Blankman because he rises up from the elevator where they deliver the baby and he's like giving his grand big entrance into the world in front of cameras holding a baby literally like Penguin. It is total Penguin. And even and it was even paired with like Danny Elfman like music too. Like it was such a good reveal. I love it. It was such a good reveal.
That score, I actually do love that score that plays. It's like almost slightly mysterious, slightly serious, childlike wonderment. Though I love that score totally during that scene. So the woman though that gives birth, when she looks at him almost, when she's like, oh, Blankman, like it's almost like, yes, she's giving into his fantasies kind of thing, but at the same time
she's like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, like, but she's like, oh, but she does that so well. But I love that he feels so accomplished after that. And one of the standout scenes, I think. Plus, was his machine supposed to be like, did he lubricate that machine to open the door, like the elevator doors? Was that like lubricants?
It looked like K-Jelly to me. It looked like KY. It really did. I didn't really say too much about it after. I was just like, okay, we're moving on.
To me, like, that's like the adult elements, right? Like he's lubing up this thing. And then in that scene, which I never noticed as a kid. So Kevin is on the floor holding the pregnant woman's hand, but she's like, you have a big finger. And I never realized as a kid that was supposed to be her grabbing his penis.
Really? What did you think it was? Or you didn't?
I don't know. I was like, oh, he has a big finger. Like, this is Ryan, how innocent Ryan was. Like,
You're
she's grabbing
funny.
his finger. Like, never put two and two together that she was holding his penis. Like, I thought she was squeezing his finger so tight. Now as an adult, I'm like, oh my God, of course. Of course.
Oh, you have a big finger! Thank you!
And it's just like that scene earlier when he's talking to his crotch and Kimberly walks in because, okay, so there's an invention that Blankman gave his brother so they can communicate, which looks like almost like an Altoids tin.
Yeah.
And has it on his belt, like a
belt buckle.
Yeah, belt buckle. And Darryl's trying to speak to him, and he's like, I can't speak to you now. And he's like talking to his crotch, and I want to play with you. I'll go in the bathroom, which is like, God.
It's like, who speaks in a belt buckle? I'm surprised that he didn't think past that mark. Like, you expect him to just bend over and like speak, and it was weird. But yeah, there were a lot of sexual innuendos in this for sure. One other thing that I really liked about this too, and it sort of goes into that sort of man-child sort of fantasy. Like, at the same time, he did want to help the community, and he felt that in his head, all he had to do was put on this suit and create gadgets and just be done with it, right? I think he did understand sort of the level of trouble that he was getting in, but at the same time, he still sort of lived in his head. And it's just the little stuff that just made it sort of authentic. And it was him singing the action score in his head as he is, playing the role of the superhero. Like, he's running and he's getting into the elevator, he's using his gadget, and in his head, he's like, dun, 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 dun. Like, he needs to have that played in his head to make it real. And it's just so funny that they paid attention to little stuff like that and kept a lot of that in, is that he in his head is still sort of playing make-believe, but at the same time still trying to, fulfill that hero-like thing. But he was very serious about his identity. There was a moment where he could have been, exposed with the psychiatrist, and he totally made his brother look like he was crazy because he wouldn't give up his identity. Like, he took all of this seriously. And I love it. His dedication was insane, and I love it. When he was in the alley fighting that pimp, that was hilarious.
Oh my god, yes, thank you for bringing this up.
I thought of you immediately when that came up, because I just had My Name Is Not Susan playing in my head the whole time.
Slap me around and call me Susan.
I warned you, Susan.
I love that. I love that. Slap me around and call me Susan. I used to use that all the time. Again, and I did not know as a child what the hell I was talking about.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, Susan. And I love his squeals, like when his injury, like any time in this movie when he's hit and he's like, ah, like it's just so.
Him and Marlon Wayans are really good at this.
Yes.
Anytime that those two are in trouble in their movies, they always scream like a woman would, or, just a very like high pitched voice or something. And it's always funny to play off of those sort of like non-masculine sort of roles and just incorporating some fun like stuff, like men can scream, all high pitch and be scared and all that stuff. So it's funny when they do that. But yeah, he did the same thing, and he took those licks and he got up like Captain America style. I can do this all day. I was like, damn, he is so cool. I don't know. I loved it. Loved it. But oh my god, but then turn it around,
again,
right?
He's a real person.
Turn it around, right? It's so cute when he started getting sort of prizes and contribution for his superhero, saving the day. And like, there were times where people were giving him money and he gave it back, and his brother was super pissed because they're poor, and he started throwing stuff out. And then he handed him his own radio and he threw the radio, and then he goes to chase him and he locks himself in the bathroom, and he was blocking in, but when he got in, he started yelling when his brother cornered him. That's what you do when you're a kid. And I played that part like 5 or 6 times over and over again because it is so my childhood.
Oh, good.
That is what you do. Like, you're cornered and you can't get away, and then you just start screaming when you get attacked by your older brother. Like, I just kept laughing. It was really good. I loved it.
It's so true. And I believe that they are real siblings in this. Like, and I even see I see that Kevin loves him and he wants to protect him, even though he's he's a harder character. But you're right. That's such a brother thing to do. I know I've been in the corner going, ah.
Well, I actually thought it was very nice that Darryl needed to work through the death of his grandmother, right? And he was, Kevin was like, I see that you need to do this to work through it. I will help you, but you got to do it my way. Like, he tried to do it safe and do a neighborhood watch or whatever, and clearly that didn't work.
Which actually would have been like, the quote-unquote thing to do, a neighborhood watch.
But he was very supportive of him at the end of the day. And, when he went out during his first mission, he was like, here's your suit. I'm going to go out and fight crime. And he like stopped what he was doing and he went to go look for him and he saved him. And,
yes,
he was a very caring brother. I totally agree.
Which adds to this to me. Like, that's another reason I like it. You don't dislike Kevin, even though he's serious and he's deterring, him from doing this hero thing. He's doing it because he loves him.
Yeah.
So Robin Givens, Kimberly, she kind of falls for Blankman. And we set up the scene where he invites her to come down to his lair, and he asks her to bring a carnation. And this is always one of my favorite lines. Like when, I think it was Kevin, right? Like, why a carnation? He's like, you wouldn't understand.
Okay, I'll do it. Tell him meet me at the 14th Street station at 6 o'clock.
You got it.
Alone. Okay. And tell her to wear a carnation.
Why a carnation?
You wouldn't understand.
And he wouldn't, yeah, because he's not a ladies' man. You know, he's a womanizer. Yeah, he definitely doesn't get it. And I do love this too, because again, all of these superhero cliches are in this movie.
Yeah.
You've got,
Yeah.
you know, that reporter that wants justice and wants the truth out, and you know, the sleazy
Yes.
mob boss and the corrupted mayor. All of it's in this movie, right? And that pivotal moment where the hero meets that one reporter that is so obsessed with this newfound hero.
Yep.
Like their meeting was set up. She got to see the lair, and I love it. He found an abandoned space that he turned into a lair with all of his gadgets. He's got his own entrance, which again, literal Batman, like a wall opens up that's not supposed to. And I really love this because they put so much effort into making him an authentic hero for that time period, and also by his sort of access to things, like literal junk turned into treasures. And he built his own mobile, which was also
so cool.
which was so essential to the train like tracks of the city. And I just thought that was so creative that's how he travels. I mean, just look at Alec Baldwin in The Shadow. His mobile is a taxi cab.
Yes.
And not to hate, but it's
Yes.
different. It's for that time. Everyone traveled in taxi cabs. That's how he got around.
Yes.
And it made sense for him to have this gigantic, like very over the top, flashy mobile. But to his, you know, resources, it involved the train tracks. And I freaking loved it. I loved it. It's his own unique style. And she got to see the lair, meet Jarvis, J5, and she fell for all of it. She fell for all of it, which I think is amazing because, you know, kind of like Superman as well, this is an underdog story. This is where the geek and his chivalry comes into play as what women want versus this, I'm a man, you're supposed to like me by default. She falls for all of it, and I think it's fabulous.
And that lair, you're right, it's still so him because it's whimsical. He's got bubbles going on. He's got this frog that like stuffed animal and merry-go-round. So it's all this junk, but he does have this like cute, whimsical personality, which is part of his charm, I think, honestly. And we have Robin Givens for, at that time, she was one of the most gorgeous, sought after women. And we have her seeing past that and ending up, spoiler again, that falling for him. Like he thinks she would go for the other brother, but no. She goes for Blankman. Okay, so again, another adult scene. When she kisses him in the lair, Rob, I didn't realize, is this him finishing?
Yeah, he's totally like ejaculating. Yes, this is very American Pie. Like I haven't been touched ever, and the slightest thing will set me off. He had no clue what was going on, but it happened. And yeah, she knew exactly what was going on, and yeah,
and she loved it. Like she was not taken back by this at all. Yeah, she was just like,
She found it very flattering.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, she interviews him and finds that he, you know, wants to save the neighborhood. And, you know, I just have one last question. Why a carnation? Well, a woman should always carry a carnation. You know, a beautiful woman should always have a carnation on her. And
beautiful
woman.
woman.
My goodness. Ooh. One other thing, speaking of, so Blankman inspires a lot of other people around him to also become sort of vigilante superheroes. And this talk show host has like a plethora of all of these different heroes. One of them is called Midget Man, who is a very famous little person who you would see in a lot of like black orientated films. And then you have Kevin West as Gay Man. Gay Man was Kevin West. Oh my God, just with leather harnesses, and you know, he just came from the leather bar, and you know, he's Gay Man is his superhero. But no, Tony Cox is the Midget Man. That's who plays him. Wonderful actor. But the host is someone who is predominant in Mystery Men. That was Greg Kinnear, who played Mr. Fantastic or Mr. Amazing.
Yes, it was.
And so it's so funny how it just tripled over into these other superhero stuff. Greg Kinnear was the host of the talk show, and I was just like, wow, I had no
Looking
idea.
really young. Oh my God.
I know,
He was
yeah.
so young in that. I was just going to say, I know that this scene, in today's standards, the terminology and the stereotypes, but I have to tell you, when Midget Man, and again, I'm sorry for repeating, but that's the name of the character. Today, we would call him Little Person Man.
Yeah.
But when he lifted the chair, and he goes, I laughed at that as a kid, but I laughed so hard now rewatching this, like, because he's so determined to do it. He's like, no, I got it.
Well, he thought he was gonna do something, and then he picked it up and realized it was superhero. And I love it. The talk show host is like, "Careful, those are nice chairs." And it was, I don't know, it was something with combination with him being bleeped out too.
Yes.
Yeah, I just think he said, and then just tripped and just fell back. I don't know. Yes, no, that was a funny scene. It was. That's why Tony Cox is so cool, because I think he can laugh at himself. You know, like, I don't think he takes himself too seriously. Almost every movie that he's in, there's always a joke about how small he is, and I think he embraces it and just laughs at it. I never looked at him as a joke or butt of a joke either. I just think, you know, that's a limitation that comes to him. And so the fact that he still thinks that he can do anything that other people can do, I just still think it's great.
Isn't that almost like from In Living Color when we had Handyman, which today I don't know if that would ever work, and his partner at one point was Little Lady, I want to say. She was also a little person on
I think I remember her. Yeah.
And she was like this little person, and she would like kick them in their knees and stuff, and we had Handyman. So, but my God, Rob, I laughed so hard. I laughed too hard over that scene that I probably should have, with him with the chair.
No, it was funny. It was funny. I also loved that he continued to just bring in more traces of Batman into his aesthetic by, you know, the blank station and the
blank station.
What did he call his mobile? Was it just the blank car or something? Or
it wasn't the blank mobile as I thought it was.
No, it was
originally.
like the blank car. But, you know, when they get to their final mission and they're going to go rescue Kimberly, and he's got, you know, his brother down in the lair, and he's like, to the blank screen. But he does it in so dramatic, just like Adam West would. And then he was like, to the blank suits. And I just die every time just laughing when he does that. Because then they do the zoom in, you know, icon, you know, transition. You know, all of that was in there. And I just thought that was all great. But one of the biggest things that I think really stood out to me as far as the aesthetic of the movie is when Blankman and other guy make their first appearance together. And it was either the first time or no, it was the second time, because supposedly they were supposed to drown in that lottery tank, which again is homage to the slow death, you know, instead of just shooting them dead, let's just do it in this dramatic way. And so they managed to escape. And so when they popped up again, and you know, Kimberly's chained up, you know, damsel in distress or whatever, and so he pops up, and you know, both the mob guy and Kimberly are like, Blankman. And he's like, he's here. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so classic Batman. And I just love that. And she's just so like, oh my God, my hero's here. And it just, again, it wasn't supposed to be super silly or not made to be, you know, it was an homage. It was supposed to pay tribute to how TV was back then. And I hate that this movie was not appreciated that way. It's too bad.
Right, because you're seeing in that trap, Darryl is saying, is this the end for our dynamic duo and things like that? And meanwhile, Kevin is still there to ground it in reality. Like, we can drown right now. So, you know, it's rooted in reality at the same time as playing a homage, because Darryl is in his own world where he is a superhero and this is all possible. So during the end scene too, I have to say, having that amazing robot, J5, when he says J5 should be gingerly on his way, and then the robot is trying to get downstairs and he just falls down the stairs.
That was good.
God, I love it. But I love that he gets back up, and then at the end, when they have to find the bomb, it's the women's room, and Blankman is just so like just and like by the rules that he's like, the woman's bathroom, that fiends, the one place we couldn't go into.
Yeah, yeah.
I love it.
Again, radicals, I have no idea if any of this sounds appealing, fun, or whatever. I mean, but just the joy in how we're talking about it. You know, this movie is clearly tailor-made for us and our taste. That's not to say that it will translate into the humor that you look for. But for a 90s movie, and for also a film with a character that was, again, created out of thin air, I think that this movie could have been a whole lot worse. And I think that there was some effort put into these characters and into this movie. I honestly would not have mind a follow-up sequel. And yeah, it's
animated show, even, like you were saying.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because, again, we don't get that many characters like this, but you have to go where the money goes, and this movie just did not. It lost a lot of money in the box office, and it really sucks. It really does. But I actually remember seeing this at the movies. I went to the movies to see this. I can't really remember exactly if it was literally because I went there, you know, wanting to see a superhero so I can be a superhero at home. You know, I was like in my teens when I saw this, but I could appreciate the effort on creating a black superhero for little kids and just for people to enjoy, you know? So, I mean, I'll leave it at that. My score still stays the same. I think it is above average. I have a bit of a recommendation with this. While you don't get free access to this movie, I think that's probably the only reason why somebody will not take a chance on this film. I think that most people understand Damon Wayans' humor, and then which also translated into like Marlon Wayans and some of his ridiculous ass characters in movies that he's made. You just have to be that type of person to get their humor. And I think if you are a fan of like In Living Color, I think that this movie would not be a horrible, regrettable watch by all means.
No, I think that goes hand in hand.
And I also think that I could see myself watching this again just for fun. I didn't think that I would want to watch this movie again because I just remember it, but there is I laughed out loud a lot.
The whole time I laughed out loud. And I can't say that in a lot of today's movies that I've seen.
Yeah, but for the most part, the writing does fall a little flat. There are jokes that adults will not find humorous, and to each their own, to be honest with you. That's just kind of how I say it.
Are you surprised that this hasn't garnered what a lot of things that quote unquote don't do well in the box office, a cult following? Because I'm sure there's other kids that grew up in the same generation that we did that have to love this movie. I find it, maybe it's not even because it's not readily available. Like, I've never seen this on cable in years. Even like someplace that you would think would maybe buy the rights to this, like a comedy set, like never.
I would have to go back in time to really research this, but I mean, it could also just come down to, the support of movie production companies, the advertising, the budget that was given to them based on, that this was a POC movie, just having access to certain things. I mean, this movie had a budget of 30 million. Don't know exactly if they were denied certain things so they couldn't get more than that. Who knows? But I also think that when you are comparing it to the heroes that we do love today, Superman, whatnot, you're always going to back what's popular. We didn't get Halloween costumes after this. Who would manufacture stuff like this? Nobody is going to
I would
really
have loved it.
But that's the thing, I think that if back then, if we really cared about having POC superheroes on screen and in the lives of home, that we would have gone the distance to make that happen. But we already had our Captain Americas and our Hulks and our Wolverines to do it for us, and Storm, and that's basically it. We just needed one, and there you got it, and that was it. You didn't pay attention to stuff like this. So like Meteor Man never took off, and that was the year before. That was 93. So you would have thought a trend would have started, but Meteor Man didn't do well either because nobody gave a shit to the cast. And that movie, whoa, I cannot wait to do that. The cast in that movie is insane. It is huge. They have every black actor that you can think
Everybody.
of in that movie. It is so
Everybody at the
amazing
time.
how they got everybody to be in this movie. But that's because Robert Townsend, who created Meteor Man, has the pull. He has the respect of his colleagues to come in and make this shit happen, because he wanted little black kids to have a superhero to look up to. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted to put the backing into something like this. And so it just ended up being a flop and forgot about. And that is why Radical Retro Rewind is here to remind you that movies like this exist. It's seriously, like, it sucks that this movie did not get the praise that it could have. So
I'm so glad you said that. And I remember loving Meteor Man as well. Like, my God, I must have grew up in a weird way, because like these were common films for me. Like I wanted a Blankman action figure too, by the way. Like, I was this into Blankman. So I'm so sad that it didn't take off, or it doesn't have even like a resurface in any way. Like, I never hear this movie mentioned.
It's
ever.
ridiculous. Like, every little boy put on a sheet and ran around and pretended it was a cape. Like, this movie is somewhat relatable in so many ways, but it just
1,000%. I feel
it's
like
just not. Yeah,
you could be any color, I feel like, and want to be a superhero, want to be a hero, and see yourself going, oh my God, this character Darryl put on a freaking tablecloth and, you know, like long johns, and he was able to fight crime. Like,
But yeah, again, very big on the commentary that I noticed this time around. And whether you put on a suit or not, I think that it is important for people to see that you don't have to have lots of resources and money to make a difference, that you can still come from the exact neighborhood that needs to be fixed and do something about it. And even if it's just the one person, it's possible. And yeah, so I still enjoyed this movie.
so glad to hear that. So if anyone who hasn't seen this movie, like Rob said, it's not really easily accessible in the sense that it's not on Netflix or streaming places that I know of, like free, but it is on the major ones that you could think of: Amazon, iTunes,
Fandango.
Yeah. Did you rent it, Rob?
I did rent it. I rented it on Prime Videos, $3.99, which is, I've seen some $2.99 movies, but these are movies that were not, released in theaters and stuff like that. So for a movie that was actually on the big screen, I think that is fair price for something like this. So, give it a shot if it sounds good to you.
Even that, I'm even saying, if you want to spend the extra probably $2, I'm sure you could find it for $5 on Amazon or something to get a DVD or anything, like, if you like physical media. But it is out there. Again, it's more of an underrated, I'm going to call it a classic. I mean, I throw that word around a lot. To me, I don't know, like, maybe because I was raised with this movie, I just remember it so much, and it's like part of my history. So please, everyone, check out this movie if you haven't. Rob, where can the lovely people find you?
Currently, Movie Geek and Proud and Brunch with the Hollowells, 2 different podcasts. One is movie oriented, while the other is a recap of the entire original series of Charmed. You can find both shows at moviegeekandproud.com. And we're also on Twitter and Instagram, Movie Geek and Proud, all one word, and Brunch with the Hollowells, all one word. And on Twitter, MGNP Podcast. And on Brunch with the Hollowells, BWTH Podcast.
You can find the Radical Retro Rewind podcast on Instagram at Radical Retro Podcast. But I'm also excited to say I'm on YouTube, people. Come find the Radical Retro Rewind on YouTube. There's the podcast, so you could hear lovely people like Rob and us discuss movies like in the podcast form with video. But there's also videos that I've been trying to put up on there, and I'm really trying to build up that library. So if you want more retro stuff and to see my face a little, I don't know.
To see your face. This man is trying out expired products on YouTube for you to remind you of the yesteryears. Yes, definitely check out his YouTube page.
You know, Rob, I forgot I haven't mentioned on the podcast that I did try Jessica Simpson's expired lotions from 2008. So yeah, that is something. That's something. And I'm alive, people. miracle I'm alive. No one asked me if I was alive after that, so I'm here. Thank you so much again, Radical Ones. That was another Radical Retro Rewind podcast. Rob will be back for more adventures in the future, and David will be back at some point as well after his move, and we will be bringing more movies such as this to you.
Thanks for listening.
Bye, everybody.